Hi there, I'm Tessa with Drink Wholesome, and I have the pleasure of chatting with Brittany Carpenter today. Brittany, hi, how are you? I'd love to hear a little bit more about who you are and what brings you to women's gut and hormonal health.
Yeah, Tessa, thanks so much for having me. I already love your protein powder and I talk about it all the time. So it's fun to be here and just talk about something other than protein powder, even though it's very relevant as well, but
Yes.
just the other side of health and kind of what else is involved. So yeah, I'm a functional medicine dietitian. I specialize in mainly gut health for women, which also touches the hormone piece as well. And I got into it because honestly, I worked in traditional healthcare as a dietitian and was just seeing over and over how women were just really being dismissed and ignored by traditional healthcare. It's almost like the model, it's just not made to really help people feel well. It's a sick model, which is good. We need that. We need traditional medicine for if I break my leg, I don't want a functional provider to tell me a natural remedy. Like I just
You want
need,
to cast?
someone to fix it. Yeah. So there's certainly a time and a place for traditional medicine, but I was finding that over and over again, women were just being labeled as whiny or being completely dismissed when they're talking about real body symptoms and nobody was helping them. And I just thought this is completely unacceptable. And so I'll be the one to do it. I will research everything to death. And I already had a master's degree in functional medicine. And so I just dove right in and started really looking at what most women struggle with, which is hormone and gut health. And I've been doing this for several years. It's so rewarding. Gut and hormone symptoms touch every part of your life. And if you can improve that, you literally change the trajectory of someone's life, which is pretty cool.
Based on your page and your whole mission, you've experienced a lot of these issues yourself, which I think brings an added level of authority to the conversations you're having with clients.
Absolutely. It's just that added layer of, I completely understand when you say you're bloated, I understand that you're not saying, oh, my stomach sticks out a little bit and I don't like the way I look. It's so much more than that. It's that, the bloating is affecting your mental health. It's shortening your fuse with your kids. It's decreasing intimate time with your spouse, or it's saying no to social events. So on the surface, gut issues seem so simple for someone who hasn't experienced them. But when you have experienced them, and same thing with hormone issues, painful, miserable periods, when you've actually experienced it, you're like, oh, okay, it's not really about the symptom. It's about what that symptom is causing you to miss out on in life. And I think when I became a mom, I became even more passionate about it because you see how fast life moves and how your babies never are babies anymore. And if you don't feel well for the time when they're babies, you'll never get it back. And that's not okay. You need to feel good in every phase of motherhood. And again, that's where a lot of women I find are just dismissed when they go to their doctor and they say, I'm tired all the time. I have a short fuse. I don't feel like engaging in social activities and all of these complaints. I'm bloated. And they say, oh, it's normal. You're a mom. You're busy. And it's like, well, no, you can be a mom. I'm a mom of a 3 and a 6-year-old and I've never felt better. My energy has never been better. And so, that's not a brag, right? It's just to say, like, we can't accept these things that we've been told as women and just go on with our lives being miserable, because there is a way out of it. It's just finding the right information for you.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's a pretty powerful why as to why you're waking up every day and doing what you're doing. And at a high level, could you explain what the link is between gut health and hormonal health?
Yeah, so for a lot of my clients, they actually think they're two separate things, and they can be, but more often it's when it comes to a hormonal imbalance of whatever kind outside of a physiological change like menopause. If it's painful, miserable periods, PCOS, other conditions like that, there is usually a driver of the hormone imbalance. So it's not the root cause of those issues isn't necessarily hormonal in nature. The hormones are responding to a deeper root cause. And for a lot of people and women, it's in their gut, because your gut drives everything in your body. If you have a dysregulated gut, your hormones are going to be off, your mental health is going to suffer, your skin is going to suffer, obvious gut issues too. And so for a lot of women, they're very linked. And I have clients come to me with, let's say, miserable periods. They have to call into work every single month for multiple days. They can't get out of bed. And we never talk about hormones in the beginning. And we're only talking about gut health. And they're like, wait a minute, shouldn't we be talking about hormones? I have hormone issues. And it's like, well, yes, but by addressing your gut, your hormones improve. And after a couple months, they're like, oh my gosh, I did not believe you. I thought, what are we doing here? And just by focusing on optimizing the gut or fixing disruptions and imbalances in the gut, you see these massive hormone changes, because what you're doing is you're decreasing inflammation. You are improving nutrient absorption, which your hormones, your body obviously needs to reproduce happily. And rebalancing blood sugar, because we work a lot on diet. And so all of those things together are what makes those happy hormones, for lack of a better word. So when there is a hormonal issue, it is really important to see, okay, well, what is causing it? That's just the fire alarm, but we need to see where the fire is.
Okay, gotcha. And so, for example, one of the questions we got from a customer prior to this call was around having really painful periods. Would someone coming to you, telling you that, what would you suggest that they do to address the painful period? Is that a symptom, a fire alarm, as you're saying?
Yeah, so there can be a lot of different causes there, but if you have overt gut issues as well, that's the first place I would look. And you don't have to start somewhere very specialized. So for my clients who come to work with me one-on-one, usually they've been struggling with really life-disrupting gut issues for decades. You know, they're on their last straw and they're just like, I have to fix this. But if you have kind of little gut issues here and there, it's something that, again, you can start working on at home. So things like really looking at your diet and your nutrition and looking at, okay, as a whole, am I consuming mostly unprocessed foods, or am I consuming a lot of packaged and foods and eating out? There is a time and a place for both. Again, I'm a busy mom of two and I run a business, and you know, I was telling you, we just had tornadoes. Like, life is always chaotic. And so there is a time and a place for convenience foods. There's a time and a place for pizza night and ice cream dates with your kids. But as a rule, as a whole, are you mostly eating those whole foods? That's step number one. Step number two is really looking at balancing your blood sugar. So that would be avoiding foods that are really high in sugar without proper protein and added fat, you know, to it. On a just really general level is looking at every time you're eating. If you think about a really good tool, a good visual that I help clients with is if you think about a plate and you split that plate down the middle, directly down the middle, you want to fill half of that plate with non-starchy vegetables. So those are all the vegetables except for corn, peas, beans, and potatoes. All of the other vegetables, you fill half of that plate. The vegetables I just mentioned are starchy vegetables, and not that you can't have them, because you absolutely can. I love a good potato. They go in a separate category. So again, we split our plate in half. Half is vegetables. Split the other half in half again, so you have a quarter plate and a quarter plate. Those starchy carbohydrates fit in a quarter plate, along with other carbohydrates like breads, I guess even
rice,
sweets,
maybe.
fruit, rice. That goes in a quarter of your plate, and then the remaining quarter of your plate is protein. And if you can model your meals like that, it will change your life. Truly, it is the most simple tool and a great way to start making health changes without making it overwhelming, because you're not counting calories. You're not even necessarily reading ingredients labels. It's a great first step, even if you're like, okay, Brittany, my diet's 90% overly processed foods. Okay, cool. Well, let's make the first step. Let's keep those overly processed foods for now. We're going to change it eventually, but for now, and let's just make it fit that plate. And what you'll find is when you start having to add vegetables and a quarter plate of meat, you start to naturally move towards more unprocessed foods. And that's your stepping stone to say, okay, I'm feeling better. I have better energy because I'm making my meals look like this plate. Next step is, because I have the energy, I'm going to meal plan ahead, and I'm going to start prepping some new recipes and see what I think. You know, and it's those baby steps that are going to help balance blood sugar, feed the good bacteria in your gut. It does so much just with that simple tool.
Okay, wow. I'm thinking about now, I'm like, okay, what did I eat for breakfast? How is this fitting into this model? So I might also be instituting some changes, even though I do try and eat largely whole whole foods when possible. What are you seeing in the nutrition research space? How is that in conversation with some of the advice that you're offering to clients?
Yeah. Research is always so interesting, nutrition research, because it's just a tricky space. You have to be able to interpret it in a way that it should be interpreted. And I think the media gets a hold of some research studies sometimes, and they have these headlines that are like, that's not at all what the, research study said at all. Yeah, exactly. So it's really tricky there, but I actually am a huge research nerd and I love it. Like, I read every ounce of the research coming out. I can tell you after a decade of reading research about really nuanced things, because that's generally what's being researched, are very nuanced things. They're looking at one particular food with one particular condition. It can tell you some things. If I could sum up what I've seen in the research in general over the past decade or so, it is really that, and this is so sing-songy, but almost like moderation of everything is always going to be the answer. And I was on a run yesterday thinking about this exact thing, and people hate it when somebody says that. They really want something to villainize. They want something that they can never eat. They want something that they should eat every single day. They want one food that's going to solve all of their problems. And it's just not how the world works. I mean, we know protein is excellent for our health, but if we overdo it on protein at the expense of not getting enough fiber and plants, your gut health is going to suffer. We know that fat is really beneficial for female hormones and for the brain, but if we overdo it in the fat compartment, and again, it's at the expense of eating other foods, our health is going to suffer in a particular way. Same thing with carbs. We need carbohydrates, we need fiber, but you can overdo that as well. And that applies to everything. You look at the additives in our food that people are nervous about, or whatever it is that Instagram is demonizing this week. And it's like, well, the answer is that a little bit every once in a while is totally fine. But if you are consuming massive amounts of that every single day, yeah, that's a problem. It's the same thing. I have clients who expect me to say never to eat Oreos, for example. They're the worst and they're overly processed. And honestly, if you're eating Oreos in an amount that would really harm your health, then the issue isn't the Oreo, it's the pattern of eating that you have. Why are you eating a sleeve of Oreos every day? Is it a emotional eating trigger thing that we need to talk about? Is it scarcity mindset because you're telling yourself this is an off-limits food, then when you're around it, you can't help yourself and you eat the whole sleeve? Is it that you have such poor energy that you're reaching for anything sugary just to give you that boost? Well, those all have very particular problems. The Oreos were never the problem. The problem is how you were eating the Oreos.
Yeah, I
think that make sense?
A super helpful reframe where people have this desire for a silver bullet that's going to change their life, and you're saying you got to keep pulling from all these different buckets, and there's no one cure, one food that you should eat, and everything will work out.
Yeah.
I see why people might be a little bit frustrated, but also diversity is the spice of life. So you're giving them a path forward that allows them to have the things they like and the things that their body needs to thrive.
Absolutely. And I think it's a huge thing in the gut health space too. And obviously, Drink Wholesome is in the gut health space, is that people are looking for a food to demonize. When they go even to a practitioner of some kind, the very first thing that's told to them is eliminate foods that your body can't handle. Let's eliminate that. And then if there's stool testing involved, they're just looking for something to kill. So it's this space of what do we eliminate and what do we kill? And that's how everything is right now, it seems. But I take a very radical approach with clients, which I find to be more effective, which is how can we make your body more resilient? We make your body more resilient by increasing variety. We want to increase the amount of foods you're consuming. And we don't necessarily want to go in and kill things. What if we just supported your microbiome and made your gut really resilient and really robust so that it could do its job and it could balance the ecosystem on its own? I think sometimes as humans, we go in and we try to overcome everything that our body is doing, and we forget that our body is incredibly good at keeping us alive. And so when we go in and we start adding a ton of supplements and we start killing things off and we do all of these things, well, there was probably a reason that was there. It was some way that your body was protecting you from something. So instead of going in and overriding what your body is doing, Let's support your body by giving it all of the nutrients it needs, both micronutrients and macronutrients. Let's go in and include gut supporting foods that are going to make your microbiome more robust. It's going to help the good bacteria grow while kind of starving out the bad bacteria. So it's almost, instead of doing it for your body, you're just giving it a little pat on the butt. Like, you can do it. Here's a little bit of oomph, like a little bit of support to help you do what you know best, which is keeping us alive and keeping us healthy.
Yes, that's okay. It also sounds nothing too dramatic is not what you're advocating for. And then giving people just a starting point, what might be some easy lunch or dinner ideas to incorporate in a busy day that is doing all of the things that you just talked about?
Yeah, I can share a couple ideas. The best ideas are going to be things that work with what you already do. So when clients come to us again, instead of, we don't give set meal plans and we say, okay, I want you to eat exactly like Brittany. No, I want you to eat exactly everything I do. Because Tessa, you don't like what I like. You know, you might look at my meals and say like, that looks gross, you know?
Maybe.
And I might do the same with you. And so what we do is we take what you're already doing and we adapt it to be more supportive for gut health and blood sugar control, which goes back in a more simplistic way to that plate, right? So I'm going to actually, instead of answering that question, can I do like a very radical example for you?
Yes, please.
For how to... Okay. Let's actually take dinner, for example. So I want you to think about macaroni and cheese. And I'm thinking about that because if you're a mom of young kids like me, mac and cheese is a food group in your home, right? Your kids are like, what do you want to eat? Mac and cheese. So if you think about how we traditionally eat macaroni and cheese, it's an entire plate of macaroni and cheese. That's it. That's the whole meal, right?
Right.
And so there's nothing inherently wrong with macaroni and cheese. We can absolutely incorporate that if it's your favorite meal. When you have that whole plate of macaroni and cheese, you have an entire plate of carbohydrates. But remember, carbs are supposed to be on a quarter of the plate, not 100% of the plate. So we want to balance this out to, number one, include foods that your gut bacteria like and thrive on, which would be the half a plate of non-starchy vegetables. There's not enough protein in there, and you need adequate protein in order to heal and repair your gut, in order to maintain muscle mass, which is going to support metabolism. You need it to help keep you full until your next meal. And then, of course, we want to keep some carbs because, hey, it's mac and cheese, right? We'll take that entire, you're not changing anything. You don't have to make, quote, healthy mac and cheese. Make the same mac and cheese you're used to making. But instead of 100% of your plate, it being covered, we're going to put it on a quarter of your plate. Well, now you're going to be hungry if we just decrease the amount of mac and cheese. So we want to increase protein. So we need to fill that quarter plate with protein. So let's say we do some nice chicken breast, maybe we've got some salmon, whatever protein that you want to include, that goes on the quarter of your plate. And then the fun part is increasing those non-starchy vegetables. So we're gonna fill half of that plate with as much color and variety as possible. If you're just starting out and you want half a plate of green beans from a can because you don't wanna think about it, great, that's perfect, let's do it. That's a great first step. But then maybe the next week when you have it, you're like, okay, we did the whole half plate green beans. I kind of got really sick of them.
Yep.
Now I'm gonna do a quarter plate of green beans, but I'm also gonna add some carrots that I'm going to roast. Okay, I love it. That's 2 different colors. Perfect. The next time it was so easy to roast the carrots that next you're going to add a couple radishes with the carrots. You're going to add some squash, whatever vegetable sounds good to you. You're going to roast that on the pan. And now all of a sudden you have 4 different colors of plants on that half of a plate. And so now what we have instead of a whole plate of mac and cheese is we still have the mac and cheese, but we added a beautiful chicken breast, which is going to help keep us full till the next meal, give us enough protein, balance blood sugar, and now we have a half a plate of beautiful, colorful vegetables as well, which are going to feed our gut bacteria. There's micronutrients in there that our body needs to function optimally, and we're going to be more satisfied with this meal. Like if you can visualize how you would feel after both of those different plates, you can see how, the plate with the chicken breast and the vegetables is going to feel more satisfying, and you're probably going to feel better. You won't be in a carb coma after, so maybe you can go on a walk after dinner or whatever that might be.
It also definitely puts me to sleep when I have too much of it.
Absolutely. And that's the key. Again, it's like pasta is fine to have.
Totally.
A whole plate of pasta, you're not really probably going to feel your best, and you're missing out on the protein you need and the micronutrients and the fiber from the vegetables.
Yes. And do you ever have clients that will introduce fiber and then that adds to their bloating? in the moment?
Yes,
And then how are you
absolutely.
working through that? Because fiber is good for you and your body needs it, but maybe it's not used to it.
Yeah, so exactly like what you just said, your body's not used to it. So there's this concept called microbiome training that I talk to clients about. So beans are a great example because when someone has beans, they're like, well, I don't eat beans because I get really gassy and I have a lot of bloating. Well, number one, that's kind of what beans do. It's the byproduct of your gut bacteria eating and fermenting the fibers in those beans, which is a good thing. It's weird to say that passing gas is a good thing, but it really can be. And so part of it is if you have not been feeding your gut bacteria, and kind of think of them like a pet, if you haven't been feeding it the food that it likes, like fiber, they probably have died off. If not died off completely, the populations are really low because you're not giving them anything that they need to thrive. So if you haven't been giving them the food that it needs for a decade, and all of a sudden you put food in your stomach, which is the exact food that they love, well, you don't have enough bacteria to really break down the fiber in there, which means it's going to pass through your colon and it's going to ferment, and there's going to be things that are going to make unpleasant symptoms. So just because you might react to a food, maybe it was too high fiber in the moment, what I encourage clients to do is start with a really small amount of a food that they feel like they can't tolerate. So for beans, for example, I might say, okay, I want you to start with 2 tablespoons of beans. Add that to your salad. If you do okay with it, the next day, you're going to add a 1/4 cup of beans and see how you do with it. If it was too much, you scale it back a little bit the next day, and you have just, maybe 2 tablespoons again. And what you're doing is you're feeding the bacteria that you need to break down those foods. You're feeding them so that they can populate, repopulate, and grow so that you have more bacteria to break down the food that you're trying to consume so that you have less reactions. So that's one part of it, of that microbiome training, just kind of going slow and allowing your bacteria to catch up. But there is also a line that can be crossed where you might have a real overt gut dysfunctional something going on that might require the assistance of someone like me or another practitioner that you've been talking to in these talks. And in that case, it's possible that you're reacting to fiber because you have an overgrowth of things that you really need to be addressed. A little bit of overgrowth can be balanced by all the things we've been talking about, really addressing plate and things. But there is kind of a point of no return where you might actually need to go in with a little bit more of a targeted protocol in order to be able to accept those foods again. So my recommendation would be try to go really slow, see how you feel, make sure you're increasing water while you're increasing fiber.
Okay.
And then if it's still not going well and it's making you feel absolutely miserable, that's when you probably want to enlist the help of a practitioner of some kind to take a deeper look and say, okay, let's figure out what's going on so we can get you tolerating those foods again.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great to hear. I have felt that way about certain foods myself and have had friends that maybe thought that they couldn't eat a whole food group entirely, but maybe it was just they weren't having it at the right volume and they weren't introducing that food with regularity in their diet. So it was more of a shock to the system than it was bad for them.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big thing that sets me apart from a lot of practitioners too, is in the food sensitivity space. So I help people literally reverse their food sensitivity because I don't see it as a root cause. I see it as a symptom. So when clients come to me and they are eating a total of 10 foods because they're quote sensitive to all the other ones, I'm like, whoa, that's a big red flag. Have you been able to tolerate apples 5 years ago? Yeah, I had no problem. It's like, okay, well, the problem isn't the food itself. The problem is probably a dysregulated gut that's causing your body to react to those foods. Sometimes it's real. Sometimes people actually have lactose intolerance. Sometimes they have celiac disease. Those are real things where they actually should avoid those foods. But I find that 90% of the time with my clients, we get them to tolerating the foods again because it was never the food that was the problem. It was that dysregulated gut. And so if we can heal the gut, repair it, make it more resilient, then they start accepting foods again, which is a longer process and a little bit more nuanced, but just kind of to plant that seed out there. If anyone's like living without bread and cheese and they miss it so much, like there might be hope that you could bring it back by enlisting the help of a practitioner. Yep.
Okay, that is good news indeed, I'm sure, for a lot of people. When
Yeah.
you have these new clients coming to you, is there anything that you hear with frequency that you just really want to take the opportunity to dispel, either misinformation from social media or just something they've heard word of mouth that you find is not true?
Oh man, there's so many things. I don't even, it'll take up like an hour. I will
Pick your
say, just
favorite.
without a ton of explanation, probiotics, taking a random probiotic is not a recommendation I give, which is big because that's the number one thing people do when they have a gut issue. They just go pluck a random probiotic off the shelf and, add that in. And usually, again, it's probably not going to fix it because probiotics need to be specific to what your symptom specifically is and what you're trying to fix. So let's say, for example, that you have a digestive insufficiency issue. Maybe your body isn't producing enough digestive enzymes or digestive juices. Well, that's not a probiotic. That's not a bacteria issue. So if you take a probiotic, it's really not going to fix your digestive issue over here because that was never the problem. So, probiotics as a whole, I do use them in practice, but not in the way that other people do. And it does not repopulate the gut, which is another huge misconception of we think we're taking this product, those bugs are going to stay in my gut forever. And that's really not how it works.
Gotcha.
The research shows that your gut microbiome will go back to what it was before you started taking the probiotic, weeks after you stopped taking the probiotic. So there are beneficial effects of taking it short term while you're taking it, but eventually they're dying off because it's not necessarily native to your gut. So I think that's a big one, a big kind of misconception. And the last thing that we can't leave this conversation without talking about, it's not so much a misconception, but something that is completely overlooked when it comes to gut health and hormone health, is mental health and nervous system regulation. The last probably 2 years of my practice, I have put a massive emphasis on this with clients and am getting even better results than I did before. I think we forget how closely connected the nervous system and the gut are. And so we're doing all the things in terms of protocols, and we're killing off the things and eliminating foods, and we're exercising and doing all of these things, yet nobody's talking to them about stress or even just what is your nervous system state when you're sitting down to eat. Because if you were in that stressed state, and again, dinner, I always think in terms of moms because that's the season of life I'm in, but sometimes getting dinner on the table is really stressful. The kids all need you at the same time. Somebody's calling you. You've got 5 different things. The kids are complaining about what's for dinner. It's just sometimes chaos. And when you sit down to eat, your shoulders are up to here, you're feeling really tense in your body. You've got that shallow breathing because you've not quite calmed down. And what happens in that scenario is your body is feeling unsafe. And when that happens, and when there's cortisol being produced, which is a stress hormone, your digestive juices decrease. So the stomach acid, that we need to help break down foods decreases. Enzyme production decreases. Blood flow is shunted away from the digestive tract because if you're in a survival situation, the last thing you need to do is digest the cheeseburger you just ate. We need blood flow to our brain and to our muscles and to our heart, because if we need to get up and run away, again, we don't need blood flow to our digestive tract or to our reproductive organs, because the last thing we need to do is make a baby also. And so you can imagine if blood flow is shunted away from your entire digestive tract, it's getting less oxygen, and how well do you think it's going to digest your food?
No,
not very well.
There's alarm bells going off in your body at that point.
100%. Yeah. And so what happens is you're dropping food in your stomach, down your esophagus, in your stomach. It's trying to go places. Your body's trying to break it down, but it doesn't have what it needs to break it down, which is why a lot of clients will find bloating and gas immediately after meals. That gets worse as the day goes on, because their stress levels increase as the day goes on. It's this accumulation of everything that's happened in the day, and they can't understand why they're having these symptoms. And sometimes it is as simple as, when you sit down to eat, let's make sure you're in a really rested, relaxed state. If you're not, let's try to fake it. So a really good free thing that everyone listening can do, which makes a massive impact, is taking 3 very slow, deep breaths before you even take a bite. And I mean very slow. And the good news about this is nobody even has to know you're doing it. You know, you can do it in a restaurant, you could do it at the dinner table. It's not like you have to close your eyes. It's just really taking those breaths until you feel your heart rate slow, and you will feel it, and your shoulders will soften, and you'll kind of relax in the back of your chair. And that's exactly what we want, because we're signaling to the body, hey, it's safe. Let's get into what we call rest and digest mode, so that blood flow comes back to the digestive tract. We can have proper digestive juices being produced, proper enzymes, and we stay calm throughout the meal if possible. Eat slow and chew to an applesauce consistency. And that alone, those simple things, fix 25% of symptoms for a lot of my clients.
I love that it's also free and widely accessible to people.
Yeah.
Other things that you can do, you know, go for a walk, or start your day with meditation before breakfast, or anything like that that you find yourself recommending to clients to have in their toolkit.
Yeah, there's so much. I think those, and again, this is a much larger discussion, but I think those things are amazing. If you can start your day in a calm space, amazing. If you can have something in the afternoon that kind of centers you and calms you, even if it's just deep breathing in your car before you step in the daycare to pick up your kids. That's one of the things that I do. It's like, okay, it's about to be chaos from here until bedtime. I'm going to take this moment to really calm myself, kind of recenter everything, and take those breaths. I think incorporating those more self-care activities throughout the day is really helpful, but I'm also interested in the in-between. I have clients who totally nail, they're like, okay, I go on a walk on the beach in the morning, I meet my girlfriends and we do journaling at this time, and then we do this. I'm really proud of that. And I'm like, okay, amazing. So proud of you. But what does that in-between look like? Right after you get done journaling and you're nice and calm, do you go check your email and all of a sudden you're heightened again? Are you rushing around during the day? So yes, you have these beautiful self-care activities, but what about the in-between? Because the food is sitting in your digestive tract in the in-between as well. And it still has to break down that food even when you're getting up from the dinner table. So it really is this much larger discussion that needs to happen among everyone, but especially women. We tend to carry a higher mental load than men, or we're at least thinking of more things at any given time. And so it really is finding ways that you can, as a rule, remain calm. And often it's a conversation around boundaries and offloading duties. You usually do these 10 things every single week, but you're at capacity, so you ask your husband to do these 5. You know, it's asking for help. It's putting up boundaries. It's really putting a ton of attention on nervous system, because that honestly, and I can say this probably, we do really deep protocols with clients, but if a lot of my clients spent 100% attention on nervous system for an entire month or 2 months, they probably wouldn't have even needed me in the first place. So it's a bold statement, a very bold statement, but I stand by it 100%, because, and that goes with everything. Every body symptom you're having will be made better if you can manage your stress and your nervous system.
Okay. Well, I don't see any reason why not to try if it can have such outsized impacts on, you know, every function within the body. That's amazing.
Yep.
I also wanted to ask you, where can people go if they want to do more self-directed research? They want to work on their nervous system, or a recipe resource, any of the things we've talked about today. Are there podcasts, books, websites that you'd recommend they check out?
Good question. And I am the worst at recommending books, because I really don't like for people to get information from books written by one person, because you're always going to get something really skewed and really flawed, because that's human nature. It'd be the same thing if I wrote a book. I only know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. I don't really read books in the gut health space and the hormone space, which really shocks people. I read more like fiction, I think, and research articles. So I don't know if I really have any great recommendations for that. Of course, you know, social media is amazing because it connects you with so many different people. I would say trying to seek out accounts that really align with these principles can be really helpful, because I know, like, even for me in my social media, I know there's a lot of people who cannot work with me. So I make a point to put out a ton of free content on my social media channels, and just various other resources on my website and different things. And I'm not the only one who does that. So finding somebody who really embodies that approach of let's go less restriction and more abundance. Let's talk about nervous system instead of just trying to kill off a parasite that you may or may not have. It's those extremes, trying to go away from that. But I think, again, finding a practitioner that you feel like really knows what they're talking about, and then consuming what they have, and then, looking into other places. But I don't have any specific books or podcasts that I feel like kind of encompass all of that.
Yeah, well, maybe how you were talking about thinking about your plate and just taking a little bit from everywhere, as long as you're checking your sources and making sure that they have your best interests at heart.
Yeah,
you can probably get a lot of good quality information from multiple places.
Yes, 100%. Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I just wanted you to share a little bit more about the types of services you offer to people that might be listening, and then how can people follow up with you if they have questions?
My website is dietitianbrittany.net. Dietitian and Brittany are spelled 100 different ways, so hopefully we can link that somewhere.
Absolutely.
Same thing with my Instagram handle is @dietitianbrittany, which again, people will get the spelling wrong, but you can check the links. And again, I post a lot of free content, very gut health specific, but again, very sensible. I pride myself in being a very sensible, functional practitioner, and that it has to fit in your real life in order for it to actually make an impact. In terms of working together, I do have one-on-one services where we can actually fast track your healing, get super in the weeds about your specific health, and make sure that we're fixing everything in your life so you can get back to actually living. So those are more for my super severe gut health clients, like the ones who poop maybe once or twice a week, or have really severe bloating that is really disrupting their life, or life disrupting periods and things. So that's more for that. If you're like, I really am a DIYer. Like, I like to do everything. I pride myself in doing it on my own. I just need a little bit of guidance. We have a program called Shift into Gut Health, and it is essentially a course within a community. The beauty of that is that we actually start by addressing the foundational optimal nutrition like we've been talking about, but to a more significant degree, and a massive, massive emphasis on nervous system. It's half the program. And it's a partnership with an NLP trainer, so essentially a root cause therapist, where we talk through even issues with body image and emotional eating and sense of worth and perfectionism and all of the things that I think come up a lot for women. So the beauty of that Shift into Gut Health program is, again, first we address optimal nutrition and mindset and nervous system, because we have to do that first. Then we build on that by really getting to the root of what your gut issues are. So there's a symptom root cause identifier tool in there that literally will pinpoint what your specific root cause is. And then I have targeted protocols that I use in my one-on-one practice, so they are proven to work. And then you can kind of move through those at your own pace with the support of myself and a beautiful community where we do a bunch of live trainings. Tonight we have book club. We just added book club. We're talking about not gut health, but we're talking about financial mindset around how much money stresses everybody out and how to rethink that. So it's just a beautiful community of people just trying to be better and feel better from a gut health perspective and a nutrition perspective. So we have that as well, and those are really the main ways to work with me, but I love connecting with people on socials. Instagram is my go-to. If you even just want to say hi, I loved what you had to say, or I think you're wrong, I love it. Let's talk about it. You can shoot me a message anytime, and I'm happy to help direct people to the best option for them.
Okay, wow. It sounds like people have a lot to choose from, so that's really great. Well, that wraps up this portion of this summit. Thank you so much, Brittany, for coming on and sharing your expertise.
Okay. Yes, thanks so much, Tessa.